those who are. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar about breaking the burnout cycle. So quite often when you experience burnout, it's not just once. It goes round in this cycle time and time again. And I've been working quite hard on this recently and had some interesting insights that I wanted to share with you guys to try and break that cycle, because it just stops everything every so often. And it's not a sustainable way of living to go at 100 miles an hour all the time and then suddenly just completely stop. So let's make a start. Before we do so, anybody who has joined and is watching this on replay, do make sure that you've got pen and paper with you so that you can make some notes as you go. There will be some exercises for you to do in your own time, so just make sure that they are there and available for you. If you had joined live, you would be able to join in the Q&A. So if you're watching just the replay and you didn't come live, do try to make the sessions live, because you get a Q&A with me at the end. You can ask whatever you want, and it just gives you a bit of additional insight if you need to for any issues or problems that you're experiencing. Also, just to say that obviously burnout is a thing that sometimes requires medical professionals to be involved rather than just things that you can do on your own. So if you do have some symptoms that could be other things as well, then it is really important to reach out and speak to your GP and not just rely on kind of getting through things yourself. So let's make a start. So the first thing with any change, the most important thing to recognize is your own cycles and your own patterns of behaviors. And these can also be your physical symptoms, the way you're feeling, your emotions. Everybody is slightly different. There is no one size fits all for burnout. Burnout affects different people in different ways. So with any change, it has to start with an awareness that there is a problem in the first place. So if you are constantly feeling like you're exhausted, running on empty, super stressed, anxious, then it is probably quite likely that you are experiencing a bit of a period of burnout. And that just can't be your life all the time. It's not sustainable to do that. It's really important to work out a way where your life is enjoyable and sustainable in a way that you can keep going and you are okay. Obviously, life throws curveballs at us, and there's always going to be things that kind of knock us back down again. But predominantly, if you are living your life in an unsustainable way, that is going to have massive repercussions on everything: your relationships, how you feel yourself, your health, your work, your children, your family, your partner. It all, I think, or at least I hope, gone are the days where employers want you to completely separate your work from your home life. Like, everything that I do is about a holistic picture. So even if somebody comes to me about their career, for example, there is going to be part of their personal life that plays into what they're experiencing at the moment. And the awareness that that is having an impact is so incredibly important. So when you're looking at your symptoms, what I would advise you to do is to take a piece of paper and split it into 4 boxes. And one box is the physical symptoms. So that could be things like that bubbling in your stomach. If you've got IBS, the chances are that's going to be some sort of IBS flare-up. It could be your heart beating faster. It could be pins and needles. It could be migraines. There's lots of physical symptoms that go alongside burnout. Then the next one along is your behaviors. So what are the things that you do when you are burnt out? So it could be things like you work extra hours, but you say no to things that actually would be really nice for you to do because you are just at capacity at that point and you are not in a position to do anything further. Your energy has got to a 0. So it could also be things like just wanting to go to bed and not really deal with anything. It could be things like staying at home and really feeling quite isolated and lonely, because burnout, it takes you back where the only thing that you can do is just breathe in and out and kind of get on with things at its worst point. But there are usually thousands of tiny little symbols before that, little symptoms, things that have been happening for you that then come out as part of burnout. So it can be quite a slow deterioration, or it can be a really quick spiral downwards, depending on what it is that you're experiencing at the moment. The next one is thoughts. And thoughts are quite often, I am rubbish at time management. I can't manage my children. I am useless. You know, it could be anything, but usually thoughts are I am statements, or people will think is quite a common one as well. So people will think I'm not very good at my job. People will think I can't handle things. People will think I'm not very resilient. So it's all of those sorts of things that really have an impact on yourself. And of course, the more you focus on things, the more things grow. So if, for example, you are having a negative spiral about yourself, what will actually happen is it will activate, this is where we get a bit scientific, it will activate your reticular activating system, your RAS, and you will start to find evidence to support whatever it is that you think. And it works both ways. So if you are finding evidence to support all of those statements that are really negative about yourself, I want you to realize that actually, if you set about a number of statements that are the opposite of those, about how amazing you are and how unique you are, and, you know, there's only one of you. So you do deserve to feel amazing, and that you are good enough, and that you are great at what you do. There's just maybe some changes that you need to make. But it's really important that what you focus on grows. It's important that you know that. And I'll tell you in a little bit about a bit of an experiment that I've been doing recently. And honestly, I just feel completely different off the back of it. And nothing massive has changed in my life in terms of circumstances and what have you. I just decided, and again, I'll go into this in a bit more detail. I just decided that it was important for me to wake up every day and feel good. And I made a commitment to that. Not always easy, but I made a commitment to it, and I feel great. And it does make a massive difference. And I feel like what I'm focusing on now is beginning to grow and take shape in my life. And I would love for that to be the same experience for as many of you as possible, because it is so much a better way of kind of dealing with things and managing. And then the last thing is your feelings or your emotions. So that could be stressed, tired, anxious, irritable, fed up, you know. And one of the other thoughts that I think people think quite a lot in this situation is, God, is this it? You know, is this what I've worked so hard for? It's not really kind of turning into anything. So the next thing is to work out, does it happen at a certain time? So for me, I am prone to burnout at the beginning of autumn, so around October. And I'm prone to burnout again, like around this stage. And I think for me, a lot of that is linked to the fact that I think I struggle with seasonal affective disorder. It could be that it's an anniversary of some description. So maybe you lost somebody and it's the anniversary of losing them. Or it could be something that is an annual event. So let's say where you work put on a massive conference every, where are we? End of February, every February, for example. And you know that during that time, you are going to be working so super hard and are going to be really exhausted afterwards. Then it's things like that. So it's kind of, part of it is being able to preempt it, and part of it is being able to understand the experience that you have had that has then led to you spiraling down or a slow deterioration over a period of time. And burnout is dis-ease. So when something isn't aligned and when something isn't easy, it creates a dis-ease. And that's why quite a lot of the time, the symptoms that you have are symptoms that are physical. Because for every physical illness that you have, your brain has sent you signs that something wasn't quite right and you weren't 100% okay. And it's done that thousands of times until it goes, do you know what? You are just not freaking listening. So if you're not going to listen to these signs from your brain, let's give you something that actually makes you stop. Let's give you a really awful cold. Let's give you an infection of something. So like a chest infection or something like that. Let's give you the flu. And it will say, right, we've had enough now. There is no overdraft for energy. Your overdraft for energy is your health. And then, of course, there are hormonal changes as well that we need to be aware of that can really impact on how we feel. And I used to be very much of the opinion that I would just, every woman experiences it and I'm just going to power on through and all of this sort of thing. Whereas actually, the more self-compassion I have had around those hormonal changes, the happier I've felt. And actually, the less has gone to shit as a result of it. So actually, in those situations, knowing where your cycle is or how you feel when this is happening, it's really important to understand that that is part of the cycle of potential burnout for you as well. So all of those things play into it. So you've got knowing your symptoms that are specific to you when you are starting to feel burnout. And sometimes you'll have to backtrack and go, okay, well, now I've experienced that I'm in quite a deep part of burnout. What would have been the earlier symptoms of that? And you can start to sort of piece them together. And regular reflection is great. So I am very much one, and I generally set my clients up for Sunday reflection, where they have a set amount of time which is just theirs, and they ask themselves some check-in questions as to how they're doing, and it will be things like, what's potentially going to knock me in the next fortnight? What has my experience been of the last week? Has anything felt like I'm swimming through treacle? Whatever suits you in terms of the language that you might use that allows you to check in and see, actually, how am I doing right now? Because it's not something that we ever do or we ever talk about. And in my generation of growing up, anything that was about you was really negative. Like, how dare you be so self-centered to think of yourself? Whereas as life has gone on, I've understood that if I stop, lots of things stop. So it's rare for burnout to just be one time. It is unlikely that you will experience burnout once and not be prone to it again and again. And if you think back to sort of how many cycles of burnout you've potentially had, I expect the number is pretty significant and something that is not sustainable for you to continue doing. So I'd like to pause for a minute and just ask you a question and ask you to start jotting some notes down. Please don't feel that you've got to share within the group. You really don't. But just have a think. If I totally stopped and I was bedridden because my health had got so bad, what would stop? Who would be affected by you stopping? Would it be family, friends, work, partner, animals, children? Just write a little list and see, because I think it's a really good reminder that there is a lot that happens because of you, and that if you stop doing those things, what actually the repercussions of that would be. So I'm going to shut up for a minute and let you have a little think. Okay, so hopefully that has given you a little bit of insight. And I would really like you to kind of take some time and add to that list later on, because there will be a lot that stops if you stop. So it's incredibly important that you understand the importance of looking after yourself. And looking after yourself goes beyond some self-care. It goes beyond having a bubble bath. It is much bigger than that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So putting your own burnout cycle to the side for a moment, I want you to think about your energy as like your paycheck every month. So money goes into your bank, it goes out on bills and boring things, and then hopefully you have enough left to be able to do some decent, exciting things as well. But once it's gone, okay, yeah, it's gone, but potentially you might have an overdraft. Potentially you might have a credit card. There are other places where potentially you could, if you wanted to, have some extra money. You don't have that for energy. Once your energy is depleted to that much, it is eating into your physical and your mental well-being, your physical and mental health, your resilience, your ability to cope in different situations, your ability to cope with change and challenge, your ability to deal with a life curveball, where just as you think you're kind of just pulling your shit together, then all of a sudden it goes, yeah, no. And life throws some sort of curveball at you. And this cycle isn't sustainable. You cannot go 100 miles an hour, then stop, then 100 miles an hour, and then stop. And I think I would be hard pushed to find anybody who that has really worked for over a sustainable period of time. It's simply not a sustainable way to live. And your work that you're putting all of this time and effort and energy into, I say this with love, it is just a job. And really what we should all be doing is working to live, not living to work. And predominantly burnout happens, not all the time, but predominantly burnout happens because of the way that you are approaching and dealing with your career and your job. Although obviously sometimes burnout can happen when there's been a big family problem or a loss and what have you as well. So, but just for the sake of today, we're focusing a little bit more on the career element. Okay, so having now got your list of stopping when you stop, let's just talk a little bit more about long-term sickness. So first of all, if your situation in your workplace and what have you is making you ill, that is a really big moment to have a stop and a think about what you have got and what you have got to change. And that period of time where you have had to stop, that is the time really to spend a lot of time reflecting on what is working, what is not, what changes you want to make, how they might impact on you, what you can do about them, and really start to really dig down as to what can happen for you that's different at the moment. So acceptance and stopping are the first two parts, because actually stopping sometimes can be really hard unless our body just goes, yeah, you're absolutely not doing that. Taking time off long-term sick, I just want to be clear that whilst it can be really beneficial to decide that you need a break, I'm very much an advocate. If you have long-term sickness, you need a plan. And if you're going to be off, you need to really work out what you're going to change in your life and start to make those changes. Because as soon as you go on long-term sick, one thing that happens is, well, I guess two things because they're slightly different. It withdraws your purpose and it withdraws your routine. So if you are not going to work every day, the likelihood is that your purpose will be somewhat lost, and you'll end up in this negative cycle of watching crappy daytime television and being alone with your thoughts a lot of the time. So if you do end up in a situation where you are really unwell, then it's important to make sure that you have planned around it about what you're going to change and how you're going to change it, because this isn't working for you. And burnout only happens really when alignment has completely been lost. When alignment just isn't working anymore, where it feels hard and difficult and sticky, that's when burnout is most likely to kind of pounce and say, oh, that's a good opportunity for me. And also being alone with your thoughts all the time does perpetuate negative thoughts, and also guilt about all of these people I'm letting down, and I'm not, able to go to work at the moment, and what my team think of me. And all of these thoughts are really, really, really unhelpful and incredibly unhealthy. So it's time to make changes at that point. And that might be a change to your job. It might be a change to your position or your seniority. It might be a different workplace that you need. But the most likely thing that you need is going to be a change of your mindset. And the change of your mindset is one of the most crucial things ever, because if you have any situation, it automatically changes as soon as you change your way of looking at it. If you can have a different perception of your experience, then actually it can really change how you think and feel and respond to those circumstances. So for example, one of the really early clients that I had, I don't even know why she just popped into my mind, because I did have a completely different example ready. So she was really suffering with empty nest syndrome. So she had one child, her son. He was the center of her life. She had walked away from an abusive relationship, which she'd been in for, I think, about 28 years at this particular point. So there'd been abuse, quite significant abuse, before she'd then had a child. And he had gone to university several years before. I think he was about 22 at this point. So he'd been to university for about 4 years at this point. And she was still grieving and heartbroken as if it was the first time that he'd left, and realized that she couldn't carry this on. We had one conversation one day, and I encouraged her to think about the different perspectives of your child leaving home, and actually how important that is. And I've been going through, if you've seen my post, you'll know, my own empty nest situation where my children left within 3 weeks of each other, last September and October. So Owen went off to university, Sky went off to her apprenticeship, which we didn't realise was going to be residential. And they're both living in university accommodation, kind of having their adventures. And empty nesting is really weird because you feel such deep joy for them that they're following their pathway. And at the same moment, this terrible grief that I mean, even if they come back to live for any period of time now, it's changed the relationship that I have with them, because they've had their bit of independence. They've had their way of doing things. They haven't been accountable to anybody else and what have you. So it does change things. So we were talking about this element, and I said to her, have you ever considered that instead of losing your son, that you released him? You know, you released him for adulthood and the things that he wanted to do and a dream that he wanted to achieve. And she let this sink in for a minute, and it absolutely changed everything. So all this grief that she'd been carrying with her for 4 years was just changed by a suggestion that there's another way of thinking about it, a suggestion that there is a difference of what she's doing. And that completely transformed all of our conversations. And she had a really, really positive experience of working with me. And it was so gorgeous to see sort of that change. And that's one of many examples. And one of the things that I work on mostly with clients is to change the perception of their experience, because each one of you have got your own model of the world. Every single one of you will have a slightly different model of the world. If you are one of a big family of lots of siblings, even though you grew up in the same household, all of you will have your own model of the world on that. Completely different. I've actually coached, not that long ago now, 2 twins, and you would think that they had different ages, different parents, different homes, because their experience is so incredibly different from each other. It's really interesting. But, you know, you do carry those, and you carry stories that weren't necessarily your stories, alongside your experiences and how those have panned out for you. And as a result of that, you make your own perceptions of how things are, and they don't necessarily need to be that way. So one of the clients that I'm working with at the moment, she came to a session, I think it was about 2 sessions ago, just absolutely livid. And I was like, what's happened? And she said, I've put all of these changes in place. I'm more present for my family. I'm doing the school run every day instead of getting into work at 8 o'clock every day. And nobody has said anything. And she had built up into her head so much that she would be really massively criticised, and her manager would pull her into the office and say, this is not acceptable. I mean, it was all unpaid stuff that she was doing, essentially, you know, salaried, didn't get extra overtime and what have you. And nobody had said anything. Nobody had acknowledged that she had, because essentially now she's probably working, I would say maybe 3 hours a day less. And it has made no impact on her work, no impact on her job. Like, she's not busier. She doesn't feel more stressed. She actually finds that she's got more time now, because there gets to a point where you're not productive after a while. Anyway, I'm starting to digress. My point is that if you change your perception of something, something changes. And her perception was, I'm a director. I've got to work really hard. I've got to work all these extra hours, and I've got to get everything done. I don't know a single person whose to-do list is finished at the end of the day. We're all in the same boat with that. It's all the same for absolutely everybody. So having a plan is really important if you come to a point where your life is essentially unsustainable, because this isn't how it's supposed to be. You are supposed to be going to work, obviously having a fulfilling career that makes you feel good and what have you. But essentially what you should be able to do alongside that is to spend time with people that you love, to spend time with people that lift you up. And if you're not able to do that, then something is not right, because getting up, going to work, coming home and creating that all over again the next day is not the way life is supposed to go. So let's recap a little bit on breaking the cycle. So first of all, recognize there is a cycle. Second of all, work out the awareness of your symptoms, which include not just physical things, but the behaviors, the thoughts, the emotions as well, because they're a big part of how you recognize that you are struggling with something. Reflect on what you want to change. And sometimes that's going to mean that you need to walk backwards a little bit. So if you're in quite a heavy place with burnout at the moment, you're going to need to step backwards and look back and say, okay, so what were the initial signs? What were the initial symptoms? And at first, you're probably going to miss them. But it's important that once you create that awareness, it's really great, because your brain goes, oh, you want that information? Okay, cool. I will save that information for you, because your brain makes decisions every second about everything that it's going to deem as important and everything that it's not going to deem as important. It's how, like, when I'm sitting in this room, I'm very much focused on you at the moment. But if I take my awareness, I know that I've got my pens there. I know that I've got some pictures there. I know my notice board is there. But I'm not paying attention to those in the normal moment, because my brain is going, they're not really important at the moment, Sarah. What's important is what you're delivering and what you're talking about, the camera in front of you and your notes underneath you. And that's it. So your brain will start to go, oh, okay, well, if you want that information, I'll save that for you, or I'll alert you to it. And then you can make a note of it. And then therefore you're starting to create that awareness, and then put steps in place. So steps in place could be anything from delegating more, to lessening your workload, really working on priorities and time management, doing regular check-ins with yourself, saying no more, which everybody thinks will make everybody else in the world hate you, and they won't. And if I could communicate one thing to everybody, it would be, don't underestimate how little people are thinking about you. Most people are worried about themselves. They are way too worried about themselves. So the next time you start ruminating and overthinking on something you said or you did in any experience, just put it to one side. Those people probably didn't even notice. They're so busy worrying about what everybody thinks of them that actually people don't think about you specifically as often as you think. So pop it to one side, because it does not serve you at all. And then the regular check-ins. So Sundays, work out what your questions could be on a Sunday for a regular check-in with yourself. Like, how am I really? How am I feeling? What's kind of happened this week? Let's just run through and work out. Has it been a good week? And just really start to get to know and spend some time with yourself, really reflecting on if you are okay. So the biggest part of burnout is all the stuff that's going on inside. The biggest part of burnout is not the physical illness. It's not the having to stop. It's not the exhaustion and the tiredness and what have you. It's what you're making anything and everything mean. And we're programmed to look out for those signs and signals from people about what they might think of us. It's programmed into us, and we don't even need that programming. It's programmed in from where we used to live in very small communities where everybody had a specific task. And if your tribe didn't like you, that was a really big problem. And we don't live that way anymore, but we are still programmed to make meaning out of everything. So for example, okay, so my spiritual sign is a blue butterfly. So if I see a blue butterfly, to me, that means you're doing fine. Everything is going as it should be. The universe has got your back. But if I spoke to one of you and said, what does it mean when you see a blue butterfly? You'd be like, that it's a blue butterfly? That it's a nice day? that it's spring. You know, you could make a million different sort of links to what that actually meant, but it would be different for each of you. So everything that happens just is, and it's us that kind of attach the meaning to it. So one of the things that I have had to oh, excuse me, one of the things that I have had to work through is working hard. So my parents taught me working hard is really important, and I don't know that I'll ever let that go, because I do think working hard is important. I believe that, and a belief is just a thought that you believe to be true. That's all it is. But I also know that I have to play hard alongside that. I've often thought I need to do more. I need to prove myself. And I think that that probably comes from a couple of different places. One, not feeling good enough historically in the first place. And the other, I think it is harder for women. I think women do feel that they've got to prove themselves a bit more. And I've certainly been in environments where a man can do significantly less and get a promotion, as opposed to a woman who has to do that bit more just to prove that she is worth a seat. And I think that still exists in a lot of places now. It's one of the reasons I like the fact that I'm vastly unlikely to return to corporate and owning my own business, because I don't have to worry about that side of things anymore. Other things are things like, oh, my team is too busy for delegation, so I can't give them additional work because they're already at capacity. And we also think helping other people is a lovely thing to do, right? So helping other people, what a nice thing to do. It is a nice thing to do until it's at detriment to you. That's the line with everything. If you say yes to something, if it's detrimental to you, it is not a good thing. And I suspect that if you really looked at how often you say yes to people, a lot of those times would be not necessarily because it's good for you, not necessarily because it works for you, but because you are kind and you're an empath. And being an empath has its own challenges. Like, an empath is somebody who soaks up the energy from anybody else around them. So if they surround themselves with good people who lift them up and are really good for them, being an empath and soaking that up, flipping marvelous. If, however, you surround yourself with really negative people, then that's not great and isn't going to have the same impact on you at all as being around people who are going to be good for you and lift you up. So, for example, my mum's a really good example of this. I do actually get on quite well with my mum now, but intermittently she still shows that the real her is in there somewhere. And so I limit the time I spend with her, because I can never truly 100% relax. I'm always, I feel like I'm always watching or on alert to kind of give her a bit of a warning if she's going down a road that we don't allow anymore. And last week on my birthday, actually, was one of those times where obviously I think it's quite clear that I have dyed my hair, which my mum chose to completely ignore, which I know meant she didn't like it. But this was definitely confirmed when I went to see my dad later in the day, who hadn't been out with us for lunch. And he said, whilst mum was snoozing, well, I like your hair, which also means your mum has said she doesn't like your hair. So I was just like, yeah, there you are. So I don't spend as much time with her because I'm always waiting. I'm waiting for that little thing that's going to come out. And that's not good for me. That's not good for my well-being. That's not good for me moving forward. So I limit the time that I spend with her. And I suspect if you haven't already thought about this, if you plot where everybody is in your life, I suspect that there's probably people that you're spending time with who are not good for you and not there to lift you up and improve your experience in life. And maybe it's time to think about lessening your time with those people a little bit. Oh, I've so completely lost my place. Where am I? I think I went off on a bit of a tangent then. Oh no, I'm not good enough. We're all good. That was all good. So embedding the stories, you can choose to embed, and it doesn't always feel like a choice. I get that. You can choose to embed negative things about yourself, or you can choose to embed positive things about yourself. And when it comes down to it, your workplace do not have, for the most part, obviously some employers out there are utterly phenomenal. They do not have a situation where you are irreplaceable, where they would bend over backwards and give as much as you are potentially giving to this situation. So really start to think about where you want to put your time, your energy, all of those things, because it's really important about where you are. There's no award, it's just a job, and they don't feel the same about you as you do about them for the most part. If there was a problem, they wouldn't even think about solving that problem. So do think about that when you're considering how much you are giving at that particular time. So let's just pause there for a second before we continue. I just wanted to share some information with you, because if you are thinking of having somebody who's a bit of an accountability partner and have some coaching to look at the way you look at things and how you present things and how your perspective changes things, then this is for you. So let me just come out and share my screen. Okay, so for the people who are on, can you give me a thumbs up when you can see this, please? I got a thumbs up. Right, let's move you out of the way so I can put it on present. Okay. So I won't take up too much of your time with this, but did just want to let you know in case any of you can help me out, actually. So I'm an experienced leader, and I've worked at all sorts of levels from frontline to national lead. I've been coaching, mentoring and facilitating since 2017, and I've worked with lots of clients now. I think the most important thing with all of these is that I have lived experience of emotional difficulty, and that has been a key part of my journey as to why I'm helping other people now. I'm not a cookie cutter coach. I'm not a cookie cutter leadership coach who talks to you solely about time management and things. I am very much mindset based. And if you are leading any other people, your mindset is the most important thing. And I have lots of testimonials that can back that up. And also, one of the most exciting things is I was top 5 for National Transformation Coach of the Year. We had an award ceremony a few weeks ago, and although I wasn't winner, I do feel that top 5 in a national award is quite an important thing. If you want to soak up a little bit more of me, I run the Inner Success Story podcast on major platforms, and season 2 and 3 at the moment are in editing, so that will be quite exciting when that comes through as well. Why won't it move? There we go. So what I'm looking for at the moment is some help. So I like to do continual market research for what I'm doing. I want to make sure that what I'm offering is relevant and helping people. And in order to do that, one of the most important things is market research around the language people use and how they're feeling. And I would love to speak to some of you about what you're experiencing. So there are certain criteria of who I need to talk to. So the criteria are: you either want to negotiate better pay, a promotion that increases your income significantly, or you're already at the career level you want, but you're struggling with more personal things that are then having an impact, and you've experienced some confident issues, for example, a challenging parental relationship, so something that happened in childhood, bullying, which could happen in childhood or the workplace, sadly, or toxic partners, and you are ready to make a significant change to how you think and feel. So if you fit that criteria and you would be willing to spend a bit of time with me, I will give you some free coaching in exchange for you giving me some help with language and with things that would really help me to continue to improve the program that I'm offering. So if you think this would be a good call for you, there's a QR code there. Or alternatively, you can book a call. I've given you a link that doesn't actually work. So I'll pop a book a call link into the email when I send the replay, or you've got my phone number there. But it would be great to talk to you if that is what you are experiencing at the moment, because it would just really help me to ensure that what I'm offering is the best it can possibly be. I have one signature program, and that is what I absolutely love focusing on, and I would love to share that with you as well. Let's stop sharing screen. So if anybody is up for that, please do book a call and what have you, and we'll send out the information in the replay as well. Okay, so back to the content. So your inner stories didn't start to write themselves in your adulthood. They started back in childhood. So in terms of burnout, that is a big indicator of some emotional issue that has not actually rectified itself yet, that you've continued to back up. So for example, my story of not being backed up was backed up. My story of not being backed up. Let's try that again. My story of not being good enough was backed up by my relationship with my parents, my relationships with people at school, my relationships with partners as I got a bit older, toxic workplaces. Like literally, I just ricocheted from one toxic environment to another and didn't realize that in the nicest possible way, I was part of the problem, because my beliefs and my version of the world had caused this massive vibrational frequency change in me, where all I was capable of attracting was the wrong thing. And so I had to do a lot of deeper work to rectify that. And I can save you years of doing it by yourself, because I now know the key things that helped me to change that, which I've now put into this program that I'd love to speak to some of you about for a bit of help on it. So for the most part, your stories don't belong to you. So for example, this one about hard work, working hard is very important. Working hard is important, but not at the detriment of everything else. Working hard is important, but not to the extent that you're miserable. It's just when you choose to work, you do work hard, but you can also choose a lot of downtime as well. But that's not my story. It has become my belief, but that's from my parents, who probably got it from their parents, and it just gets passed on down. So a lot of stories that you have, a lot of beliefs that you have, aren't even about you. They were never about you. They were always about things that have been handed down by other people. Also, we are programmed when we are children to believe that adults are right. You don't question an adult. Adults are the be all and end all of everything. And I think a lot of us can probably resonate the time where we realized that our parents were not perfect, and that they weren't infallible, and that they did make mistakes and what have you. And that I think is a rite of passage for lots of people, but it doesn't then make us go, oh, so all of those things that you told us when we were younger, now I want to question those. Now I want to see what you know. That's not what we do. That's not what happens at all. We just continue to take those stories and forget that they were decisions that we made when we were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and that maybe they do need some questioning around them. So burnout starts within, and it starts with your early stories. And the best way to break the cycle of burnout is to start to acknowledge and understand more what your story is and how it is leading you to constantly live in an unsustainable way, which probably has a lack of boundaries in it that need to be rectified as well. Going the extra mile has always been peddled as this amazing thing, and it's not when it's detrimental to us, and it's not when we are showing others, you know, the way forward. So if you've got children, it's so important that you are starting to model these things younger, in order to protect some of these generational stories from going down into your children, creating the same patterns that have been created for you as well. So you are enough. And feeling good creates a positive flow. So over Christmas, I quite often have a bit of a reflect, but something deeper happened this time. And I made some really key choices that are very different for me, and things that I wouldn't normally do. So first of all, I love a self-help book, but one of the things that I've created in my life now is that I'm not just reading a self-help book going, oh, that was useful, I'll take these 2 things from it and move on. I'm actually studying these 2 help books. And actually, for a lot of them, I don't know if you know, there's a workbook that accompanies a lot of self-help books that you can then start to work through and do some of the deeper work. So one of mine is Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life by Bob Proctor. And the other is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. The only caveat I would say about the Gay Hendricks book is do not listen to the audio version in the car, because this man has such a soporific voice. I nearly found myself falling asleep at the wheel a few weeks ago and thought that's probably not a good idea. So yeah, don't listen to him in the car. He's very, very chilled, and it just makes you go, oh, this is lush. The other thing that I have done is I read, how long ago was it? A couple of weeks ago, I think. This is something that's much newer. And it said, faith and fear are both invisible. Which one do you want to choose? And it really made me stop and think about, if I live in fear, what will that create? Well, what you focus on grows, so it's just going to create more fear, more lack, more problems. But if I concentrated on the faith that I am enough, that I do a great job, that I can help other people, that I don't need to work my absolute whatsits off, I can start to think about things that are important to me. So I spend now a lot of time of my day doing things like visualization and reaffirming the things that I want. And it has completely changed how I view things. I feel so much more relaxed, so much more chilled. They're things that I'm going to be bringing into the program with my clients alongside you guys helping me as well. And I realized that the more I focused on the fear and the swimming through treacle kind of feeling, the more that I was just going to expand that experience. And that's not an experience that I want to continue. So whenever I'm about to make a decision for me that's not good, so pay too much attention to fearful thoughts and what have you, I'm just repeating, I'm not that girl. I am not that girl. She doesn't focus on that anymore. And it has really improved how I'm thinking and feeling. And as a result, I can see things starting to change. And it's become fun. It's become really interesting to experience that. So that's my own experiment. But I think now it's important that you guys have a think about how you want to change things and how you can break your own burnout cycle by putting these steps in place and by thinking about where some of your stories come from that mean that you feel that you've got to work harder and harder and harder and just burn yourself out totally. So to the people who are watching the replay, thank you so much for joining me. To the people who are watching live, thank you for joining me, but do stay on because we've now got a period where you can ask me some questions and what have you, and I am here to give you advice and support. So I'm going to turn off the recording. This part won't be recorded. It's just private with whoever wants to remain. If you've got any questions, have a look through your notes and ask me. And right, let us stop the recording.